Well, I'm going to talk about Naja 2. And this is or Naja R. I think R, yeah. Which is a Chinese animated film, and as you might tell from the title, it is a sequel to a Chinese animated film that I have never seen or heard about. But apparently, this is pulling up trees and just making all the money in China, quite frankly. And this is a film that obviously because it's a sequel, and I'm not sure if you've ever read any sort of Chinese folklore before. It is dense. Chinese folklore, I usually find it to be quite dense. And you have the demon orb and the moon pearl, and they come together and blah, blah, blah. And at the beginning, they have this bit, which obviously the whole film is in Chinese with English subtitles. And it's like, so they have this whole bit that is just sort of narrated to explain and to catch you up to speed with what is going on. And essentially, from what I can understand, tells you the story of the first film. And you essentially have these two things, and it's like a typical sort of like that you find a lot in Chinese mythology of like the yin and yang, where you have the two opposite ends of something. Then they're called the demon orb and the something pearl. I can't remember what it is. And these two people, who are Neja and Albong, or Albing, yeah, they in the first film, you see that they've come together, they've sorted out the differences, they've protected this town or this village, but in doing so, they both kind of like got killed. Well, but not really killed. Their bodies got destroyed. Their bodies got destroyed, but their souls are still around. So when this film starts, you find their souls floating around this village, and there's a guy there who is going to rebuild their bodies. And there's the whole sequence is all about them rebuilding their bodies and how they're going to do it. And it goes into this whole thing because Neja, who is the demon orb thing, he is kind of like if you think Lilo and Stitch, he's like Stitch. Even though he's a kid, but he's like Stitch in that he's just sort of like he's precocious. He is all over the place. He's off the you can't essentially nowadays he will probably be diagnosed with ADHD, can't sit still or anything like that. And when they go, he's like, hang on, wait a second. If you're rebuilding my body, you can carve the body. How about this? And they have quite a funny sequence where he goes through all these different types of bodies that he could have, and all of them they go through all the sort of different cliches of the type of people you get in Japanese anime or essentially East Asian animation. There's the muscle bound thing. There's a really tiny thing with like massive kawaii big eyes. There's all and so from the word go, you get the feeling that, okay, yeah, this thing is going to be a bit crazy. It's going to be a bit off the wall. It's going to be a bit zany, for want of a better word. And then that kicks off at the beginning of this film a massive battle that does scale in a way that I think you only find in Chinese things, where there's just like, thousands on one side, thousands of demons on this side, thousands of soldiers on this side coming together. Let me put it this way: it possibly, and this is the opening action sequence of this film, it possibly puts some of the sequence in Lord of the Rings, the original trilogy, to shame in terms of scale, because this is animation and you can do that in animation, and it's going to be too expensive to do that in live action. But this thing that kicks off this film, most films would kill for this to be the end final battle that kicks off this film at the beginning. And so they have this whole thing, and then they come through reasons, then they have to go on a quest. And through reasons, Neja and Aobing now end up sharing the same body. They end up sharing the same body, and then there's this whole thing where they have to go somewhere, and they have to go and get the thing, and they have to do all these, almost like, 7 trials of Hercules. But they have to do 7 trials of Hercules and they have to figure out who takes over the body at what point to make sure that they actually get the most thing. And it goes on, blah, blah, blah. Fantasy stuff goes, da, da, da. Something happens in the end. Some people live happily ever after. Some people don't. Because this is not a Western cartoon. And even though seems to be kid-focused, there is death. There is blood. There is... like, let me put it this way. There's a fight in this that ends up with somebody to keep himself from losing the fight, cuts off his own hand. And this is shown just like, yep, matter of fact. And and I remember watching, there was a cartoon we watched called Voltron when we were growing up, and it was Japanese. And I remember that they just had a different approach to death, different approach to showing kids death and telling kids about this stuff. Where you can see in the American stuff, they'll be like, oh no, they're not dead. We're just going to cut away before they get hit. But if you watch the original thing, yeah, they're dead. Of course they got shot in the face. Of course they're dead. And it's like, and that is the thing with this. There's bits where I was like, hang on a second. Is that blood? Yeah, that's blood. That is there is a bit in it which ends up where somebody does something to somebody else, which means that they have thorns sticking out of every bit of their body, and if they move, their body gets ripped to shreds. Spoiler alert: they move.
Mm.
Spoiler, they move. And so, all in all, I thought that the action scenes were quite good. I mean, I think the mythology was kind of quite dense, and after a while, you just sort of like sit back and just let it wash over you because there's no way you're going to catch up with it, and there's no way you're going to understand exactly what happens, not without going and reading like loads of books. And the final thing I'll say about this is I said at the beginning that I'm a bit shocked that it's that big of a hit in China because I remember there was a time when the director Zhang Yimou, the guy who directed Hero, he directed Hero, and I remember that Hero was not allowed in the country no, it was his previous films that were not allowed in the country for a while, and he was pretty much exiled because all the stuff he was talking about was about it was not in support of the government, so to say. It was perceived as not being in support of the government. And then Hero was kind of like him being welcomed back into the fold because he was all talking about why China must remain one country and all that kind of stuff. And this film, the central tenet of the film, the central thing about the film seems to be about rebellion and how good rebellion is and how you can't trust those people in power, which to me I may be wrong, and something might have been happened while I wasn't looking, but to me, do not seem particularly Chinese values. So for this to become a massive hit in China, I'm like, I've missed something here. Something's changed while I wasn't looking, and I need to figure it out. But the central theme seems to be rebel and don't trust what the people in power tell you. That is the central tenet of this film, which is, to me, shocking for a Chinese film. But I mean, I welcome it,
But
but
they've allowed to be broadcast.
yeah, no. I welcome it, but I find it a bit shocking. But all in all, I'll give it a 3 out of 5. I think that its action sequences are impressive. The animation is impressive. It does, however, I do think it goes on a bit. I think it's too long. It's 2.5 hours. I think it's too long, but and not everything holds together. There's some things that are done for being comedic and for that, but don't really add anything to the story. There's some things that seem to be done to be for being dramatic, but don't really add anything to the story. So but hey,